Jason had always been careful, a human walking among beings far stronger, far older, and far more intelligent than himself. The alien starship towered over everything he had ever known. Its corridors stretched endlessly, humming softly with the energy of technology that seemed alive. Most humans aboard feared the alien race that ruled this vessel, a race whose power could crush planets and whose intelligence could outthink the most advanced computers of Earth. But fear was not what Jason felt. He felt fascination, a pull he could not resist, and it all centered on her, the alien queen. She moved through the corridors like a shadow of liquid silver. Her body seemed both delicate and formidable, every movement measured, every gesture perfect. Her skin shimmered with faint bioluminescent patterns, changing colors with her mood or perhaps with the light. Her eyes were the color of molten gold, and when they fell upon him, Jason felt something in his chest tighten, a strange combination of warmth, fear, and longing. Every human who saw her was intimidated. Jason, however, was mesmerized. He could watch her for hours and never tire. He first noticed her from a distance, standing atop the observation deck, looking out at the stars as if she were trying to memorize every twinkle. There was a loneliness about her, something that no human could understand. Yet Jason, in the quiet moments when no one was watching, felt he could sense it. That loneliness called to the part of him that had always been sensitive, always drawn to those who seemed larger than life yet quietly vulnerable. And so he lingered, hidden in shadows, learning the rhythm of her steps, the cadence of her voice when she addressed her court, the way she smiled rarely but genuinely, a small tilt of her lips that made Jason's heart ache in ways he could not explain. He knew it was dangerous to feel this way. The humans on the ship were expendable in the eyes of the aliens, and admiration could be mistaken for disobedience, or worse, betrayal. The alien race did not tolerate weakness. To be caught starring, caught caring too much, could end his life without hesitation. But he could not stop. Each glance at her left him trembling, each passing moment without seeing her felt like a loss, a dull ache in his chest that grew sharper with every hour. One evening, Jason found himself repairing a small panel in the dim outer corridor. The low hum of energy filled the air, vibrating through the metal floors and walls. He tried to focus on the task to keep his hands steady, but he could not. His mind wandered to her, the way her eyes glowed in the dark, the way her presence could command silence without a single word. He imagined speaking to her, telling her that he admired her not out of fear, but out of something deeper, something real. He imagined being brave enough to reach out, to let her know that a human could care without weakness. A sudden shadow fell across the corridor. Jason froze. His heart leapt into his throat. She stood there, taller than he remembered, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly as if reading his thoughts. The glow of her bioluminescent patterns pulsed slowly, a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. Jason wanted to speak, to explain, to disappear all at once, but he could not move. The fear of being caught, of being exposed, clashed violently with the longing that had grown inside him for weeks. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. Her gaze pierced him, and he felt as if she could see every hidden corner of his mind, every silent admiration, every quiet wish to be noticed. And in that moment, Jason realized he had been reckless. He had let himself care too much. He had let himself hope, and for the first time he wondered if that hope would be his downfall, or the beginning of something no human had ever dared to imagine. Jason could still feel the weight of her gaze pressing into him, like a force he could neither see nor resist. Ever since that evening in the outer corridor, he had avoided the Queen's presence. He moved carefully, performing his duties with mechanical precision, hiding the restless flutter in his chest that always appeared when he thought of her. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. It was late, almost the edge of the artificial night cycle on the starship. Jason had been tasked with repairing the communication relay in the lower decks, a place even the bravest humans avoided. The corridors were narrow, dark, and echoing, lit only by faint panels that hummed quietly above. He crouched over the array, trying to ignore the racing of his heart. He reminded himself, admiration is fine, longing is dangerous. Do not be seen. Do not let her know how much you care. But as he worked, a faint sound made him pause. A soft, almost imperceptible hum like a melody carried by the ship itself. And then the air shimmered like heat waves rising from molten metal. He looked up and there she was, stepping out of the shadows with the elegance of someone born to command attention. The Queen. She had not announced her presence, and yet he had sensed it somehow, an instinct he did not understand. Her golden eyes fixed on him, unblinking, unyielding. "Why do you linger here, human?" Her voice was soft but resonant, filling the narrow corridor without raising its volume. It was both a question and a statement, a test of his honesty. Jason's chest tightened. His fingers froze mid-motion on the control panel. He could lie, of course. Claim he was merely performing a routine repair, nothing more. But the words he had rehearsed fled from his mind like sand through fingers. The truth, unfiltered and trembling, came out in a whisper. I just wanted to see you up close." For a heartbeat there was silence. The Queen's golden eyes seemed to glow brighter, not with anger but with something more complex. Curiosity, amusement, judgment. Jason could not tell. His knees felt weak, his heart pounding like it would burst from his chest. He had crossed an invisible line and the consequences could be fatal. "You admire me," she said, her voice calm, almost melodic. "Do you understand what that means?" Jason swallowed hard. He had never felt so small, so exposed. I do," he admitted. "But I never meant disrespect. I care about you." The words felt heavy, dangerous, yet liberating. The Queen tilted her head, her long tendrils floating around her like liquid threads. She stepped closer and the hum of the corridor seemed to bend around her presence. "Humans are fragile, yet some have hearts braver than their bodies can contain." Jason's mind raced. Was this a warning, a compliment, or a trap? He could not tell, but in that instant he realized that she saw him, not as a weak human, not as a servant, but as someone who dared to feel. The moment stretched. Time itself seemed to slow, each second a delicate balance between hope and fear. Jason felt the weight of 1,000 possible outcomes pressing down on him. Punishment, rejection, death, or understanding. Then almost imperceptibly she turned, her movements fluid and deliberate. "You will be summoned," she said softly, almost to herself. "Prepare yourself." Before he could respond, she was gone, leaving the faint trace of her scent, a strange mixture of metal, flowers, and something Jason could not name. Jason sank to the floor, his hands shaking. He had survived this encounter, but the Queen had marked him in some way, invisible yet undeniable. His heart was both heavier and lighter than ever. Fear mingled with hope, danger entwined with fascination. And deep inside, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He could never stop caring, no matter the cost. The message arrived in the middle of the artificial night cycle, quiet and precise, as if it had been delivered by the ship itself. Jason had been in his small quarters, trying to focus on routine maintenance logs, attempting to calm the storm inside him that had been building since the Queen had caught him admiring her. The chime echoed softly in the silence, unfamiliar yet deliberate. His hands froze on the datapad as a single line appeared in glowing text. "Come to the chamber beneath the throne. Alone." Alone. The word throbbed in his mind, both thrilling and terrifying. No human had ever been invited to that chamber. The stories circulated among the crew were vague, whispered, a place of power, a place where the Queen made decisions that could shift the fate of entire worlds. And now he was being summoned. He felt a surge of adrenaline, his chest tight with fear, yet beneath it, an undeniable thrill. His heart beat so fast it felt like it would lift him off the floor. Jason left his quarters silently, careful not to draw attention. The corridors outside were dark and quiet, the soft hum of the ship underlining every step he took. Every instinct screamed for caution. This was dangerous. One misstep could mean his death, or worse, eternal exile in the ship's lower sectors. But curiosity, admiration, and a deep, trembling hope pushed him forward. The path to the secret chamber was unfamiliar to him, twisting and winding through sections of the ship humans rarely entered. The walls pulsed faintly with energy, casting soft, iridescent reflections across his face. Jason's palms were sweaty as he approached the massive doors that marked the entrance. The design was unlike anything human-made, smooth and alive, as if the walls themselves could sense his presence. Slowly, almost reverently, the doors opened. Inside, the chamber was breathtaking. The scale was immense, far beyond what Jason had imagined. Floating lights hovered in the air like stars caught in crystal, illuminating a vast space filled with alien architecture that seemed to defy gravity. The walls shimmered with intricate patterns, constantly shifting, alive with energy that hummed in harmony with the ship itself. At the far end, on a raised dais, the queen sat on her throne, more imposing and magnificent than he had ever seen. Her golden eyes glowed softly, and her bioluminescent patterns pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat Jason could almost feel. Jason's steps faltered as he entered the chamber. The air was thick with a strange, intoxicating energy, an invisible force that made his pulse race and his mind spin. Yet, even in the presence of overwhelming power, he felt something else, a strange warmth, a quiet invitation. The queen's gaze held him firmly, studying every micro-expression, every tremor of fear and excitement in his body. He was both terrified and uncomfortably exhilarated. "Do not be afraid," she said, her voice soft, melodic, carrying over the chamber without the need for sound amplification. It was a command and a comfort at once. Jason nodded, his voice caught somewhere between a whisper and a gasp. He wanted to speak, to explain himself, to say everything he had ever felt for her, but the enormity of the moment froze him. She rose from her throne, her movements fluid and deliberate. Each step she took caused the floating lights to pulse in response, illuminating the patterns along her skin, painting the chamber with colors that shifted from silver to gold to deep violet. Jason watched in awe, feeling smaller than he had ever felt, yet strangely elevated, as if the simple act of being here was proof of something miraculous. "You have been summoned," she said, her gaze unwavering. "Not as a servant, not as a curiosity, but as one who dared to feel what others do not. You will stand here, human, and prove that your heart can match your courage." Jason's breath caught. He did not know what she meant by prove, but the challenge sparked something deep within him, a determination that defied the fear clawing at his mind. For the first time, Jason realized that being here was not punishment. It was an invitation into something far larger than himself, a step into a world where human courage could mean more than anyone had believed. And as the queen watched him, waiting, he felt the first spark of hope flicker, fragile but undeniable, deep inside his chest. The chamber was quiet now, filled only with the gentle hum of the ship and the soft glow of the floating lights. Jason felt his hands tremble as he stepped closer to the queen, his heart pounding in a rhythm that seemed louder than the energy pulsing through the room. Every instinct in him screamed to be careful, to hide his feelings, but he knew he could not. Not now, not when he was this close. The queen's golden eyes bore into him, unyielding yet strangely gentle. She did not speak for a long moment, allowing the silence to stretch, and Jason felt as if every secret he had ever kept was being examined. He could not lie. He had tried before in small ways, pretending to focus on work, pretending to be indifferent, but the truth had always found its way to the surface. And now, here in her presence, it could no longer be contained. "I admire you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not because of your power, not because of the way everyone fears you, but because of who you are, because of how you move, how you think, how you carry everything on your shoulders and still seem alive." He paused, feeling the words tremble in the air. He had never spoken like this to anyone before, not even to his closest human friends. Yet something about the queen made it impossible to hold back. Her eyes softened, the golden glow dimming slightly as she listened. Jason had expected anger, punishment, maybe even dismissal, but she did not move to harm him. She did not command him to leave. Instead, she studied him as if weighing every word, every pulse of his heartbeat. "You dare to speak truth to me," she said softly, her voice melodic and calm like the ripple of water over stones. "You do not hide your heart, even though it could cost you everything." Jason swallowed hard, fear and relief mingling in a confusing swirl. I know it could be dangerous, he admitted. I know that what I feel, what I care, could make you angry or dismiss me, but I cannot stop. I cannot pretend I do not feel this. His chest tightened and he felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. He had never been this vulnerable before. He had never allowed himself to be truly seen. And yet, standing here in her presence, he realized that the cost of hiding his heart was far worse than any danger. For the first time, the queen stepped closer, her movements slow and deliberate, the lights in the chamber flickering in response. Her gaze never left his, but there was something different now, a softness, almost imperceptible, that made Jason's heart leap. Humans are fragile, she said, yet some have hearts braver than their minds, braver than their bodies. You are such a human, Jason. Her voice carried a weight of understanding that he had never expected from a being of her power. Jason felt a mixture of awe and disbelief. He had spent weeks, months even, watching her from afar, never imagining that she could truly see him, not just as a human, but as someone with feelings, with courage, with the ability to care. He realized in that moment that the gap between them was not just physical or species-bound. It was emotional, a bridge he had dared to build simply by being honest. "You have shown courage," she said finally, her golden eyes holding his. "And honesty. That is more valuable than any obedience I could demand. You have proven that your heart can face what your mind fears." Jason's chest swelled with a warmth he had never known, a sense of being recognized, being truly seen, and perhaps being accepted. In the chamber, under the soft glow of lights and the quiet pulse of the ship, Jason realized something profound. Admiration had become confession, and confession had become connection. And in that connection, fragile but real, there was a spark, an ember that neither distance, fear, nor the vastness of space could extinguish. The chamber shifted. Jason blinked, unsure if it was real or a trick of his mind. The walls rippled, colors bending like water under the surface of a sunlit pool. The floor beneath him felt lighter, almost as if he were standing on glass above a void. A strange, exhilarating fear surged through him. He looked toward the queen, but she was no longer seated on her throne. She hovered above the dais, her bioluminescent patterns glowing brighter, illuminating the chamber in hues of gold and violet. "Your feelings are true," she said, her voice calm yet commanding, carrying over the shifting space. "But love for a queen is not simple. To truly care, one must prove that the heart can endure what the mind cannot imagine." Jason's stomach knotted. He had expected challenges of intellect, of obedience. But this felt like the weight of stars pressing down on him. The floor rippled beneath his feet, forming shapes that seemed to reach into his deepest fears. Shadows stretched and twisted, forming visions of loss, failure, and helplessness. Jason felt panic clawing at him, urging him to run, to escape, to deny his emotions before they could be tested. Yet when he looked at the queen, her gaze steady and unwavering, he realized that retreat was not an option. "You fear," she said softly, "and yet you are here. That is the beginning." The chamber seemed to respond to her words. Stars and galaxies swirled in the void beneath him, forming a vortex that mirrored the chaos in his mind. Jason clenched his fists, feeling the raw pulse of his courage against the rising tide of fear. He remembered every stolen glance, every quiet moment of admiration, every heartbeat that had raced in her presence. This was no longer just survival. It was proof of the heart he had dared to reveal. He stepped forward, one foot then the next, the ground shifting beneath him with every motion. Shadows of doubt flickered at the edges of his vision, whispering that he would fail, that he was weak, that love was folly. But he pressed on, drawing strength from something deeper than thought. The unwavering connection he had felt with her gaze, the spark of recognition that had changed everything. The queen extended her hand not to guide but to observe. "Each step you take," she said, "is a choice to honor what you feel even in the face of fear." Jason's legs ached as the void beneath him twisted and shifted, testing his balance, testing his focus. His chest burned, his heart threatening to burst, but he could not turn back. Every step forward was a declaration. "I am not afraid to care. I am not afraid to risk everything for something real." At the center of the chamber, the void stilled. Stars and shadows withdrew, leaving him standing on solid ground once more. Jason looked up to find the queen descending gracefully, her expression unreadable but her gaze filled with a quiet intensity. "You have faced the test," she said, her voice both praise and acknowledgement. "Many falter here, unable to confront what lies within themselves. Yet you endured. That is strength, human strength." Jason's legs trembled, exhaustion and relief mingling in a haze that made him dizzy. But within that haze was something else, a warmth that spread from his chest, filling him with a confidence he had never known. The test had not only proven his courage, it had proven his heart. And the queen, the being who had seemed untouchable, seemed to recognize it. For the first time, Jason realized that the chamber, the test, the shifting void, it had all been about him. Not about punishment, not about dominance, but about understanding. She wanted to see if the human before her could match the depth of feeling she glimpsed in him, and he had. He had faced fear, embraced it, and emerged not broken, but stronger, more real than ever. The queen descended fully, standing before him, her glow bathing him in gentle light. Jason's chest swelled with a mixture of awe, relief, and something else. Hope. Hope that his feelings, once so fragile, were now understood. Hope that the bridge between human and queen, between fear and courage, was no longer fragile but alive. "You have proven yourself," she said finally, her golden eyes softening. "Not because you obeyed or feared, but because you dared to feel. That is more than any human has ever shown me." Jason's heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with a deep, soaring certainty. He had faced the impossible and survived, not just in body but in heart. After the test, the chamber returned to its serene state. The stars and floating lights shimmered softly, casting gentle reflections on the smooth walls. Jason felt his legs trembling, not from fear now, but from the intensity of what he had just endured. He had faced his deepest doubts, his rawest fears, and had emerged not broken but stronger. Yet, standing in the silence of the chamber, he realized something even more profound was waiting, something far greater than courage. The queen moved closer, her golden eyes watching him intently. Her glowing patterns pulsed in a rhythm that seemed to match the beat of his own heart. Jason had never felt so small and yet so significant. Every other human aboard the ship seemed distant, their fears trivial compared to this moment. And here, before the most powerful being he had ever known, he felt seen, fully seen. "You have shown bravery," she said softly, her voice carrying a warmth he had not expected. "But there is more than courage in your heart. There is understanding and care. That is rare, human, almost unheard of among your kind." Jason swallowed, a lump forming in his throat. His voice caught when he finally spoke. I didn't know it was possible to be recognized like this. Not as a servant, not as someone beneath notice, but as me." The queen extended her delicate hand, hovering just above his. It was an invitation, not a command. Jason hesitated for only a moment, then reached out, letting his fingertips brush hers. A warmth unlike anything he had ever known surged through him, filling him from chest to fingertips. The chamber seemed to respond. The lights pulsed more brightly, the stars reflected in patterns that danced around them. For the first time, Jason felt a connection that transcended words, species, and the vast differences that separated them. "You are different from the others," she said, her voice almost a whisper now, intimate and gentle. "I see your heart and I feel its truth. Few dare to show what you have shown me." Jason's chest swelled. All the loneliness he had felt as a human on this alien ship, the isolation, the fear of being nothing, of being overlooked, was replaced with something profound, belonging. Not because of power, not because of duty, but because someone extraordinary had recognized him. They began to talk. Words were not always necessary, yet they shared them. Stories, quiet confessions, laughter that echoed softly against the chamber walls. Jason learned fragments of her life. The weight of leadership, the loneliness of immortality, the burden of always being feared and admired but rarely understood. And the queen learned about him. A human who dared to feel beyond fear, who dared to care even in a world where humans were fragile and expendable. Hours passed, though time seemed meaningless in the chamber. Jason's heart had never felt so full, his mind so clear. The Queen's presence was no longer intimidating, it was comforting. Her gaze no longer tested him, it invited him. The barrier that had existed between human and alien, between subject and queen, began to dissolve, replaced by a fragile yet undeniable bond. A bond built on trust, courage, and the willingness to be vulnerable. Jason realized something that night that he could never have imagined. Admiration had become connection, fear had become understanding, and longing had become shared experience. In her presence, he was more than human. He was valued, acknowledged, and truly seen. And in that realization, he felt a spark ignite inside him, fragile but alive, promising that their connection could endure far beyond the walls of the chamber. The Queen's hand hovered near his, and Jason held her gaze. No words were necessary. The air itself carried their unspoken understanding. He had proven his heart, and she had recognized it. And in that recognition, something shifted, a quiet, unspoken promise that even across species and worlds, two beings could find a connection deeper than fear, stronger than doubt, and more enduring than time itself. Jason knew then that he would carry this moment with him forever, a memory etched into the core of his being. The chamber had not only tested him, it had transformed him. And as the Queen's golden eyes met his, soft and unyielding, he felt the truth settle in his chest. He was seen. He was known. And for the first time he felt that love, in all its fragile courage, could exist here, even between human and queen. The chamber was quiet now, the swirling lights soft and gentle as though the space itself was holding its breath. Jason stood at the center, feeling a mixture of awe, exhaustion, and an unfamiliar warmth deep in his chest. He had come here terrified, uncertain, and alone. And now, after the test, after the confession, after the connection, he felt transformed. Something inside him had shifted, and he knew he would never be the same again. The Queen stood before him, her golden eyes reflecting the soft glow of the floating lights. She looked at him, not as a subordinate, not as a curiosity, but as someone she had acknowledged, someone she had allowed to step closer than any human had dared. Her bioluminescent patterns shimmered in slow, deliberate waves, echoing the quiet heartbeat of the chamber. Jason's chest tightened with emotion, and for a moment he could not speak. Words failed him because nothing could capture what he felt. Fear turned into courage, admiration turned into recognition, and longing had blossomed into connection. "You have shown what many cannot," the Queen said softly. "Not courage alone, not obedience alone, but the strength to feel deeply, to risk everything for the heart." Her words resonated within him, confirming the truth he had been feeling all along, that love, even for a being so far beyond his own kind, was not weakness. It was a power of its own. Jason took a step back, trying to steady himself. His voice was shaky but firm. I will not forget this. I will never forget you, or what you have shown me. I care more than I can explain, and I would face anything to honor that." The Queen's gaze softened further, a small, imperceptible shift that made him feel both seen and understood in ways no human could ever imagine. For the first time, the Queen moved closer, a deliberate but gentle presence, and placed a hand in front of him, palm facing upward. Jason hesitated only a moment before placing his own hand over hers. A rush of warmth surged through him, connecting them in a bond that defied language, defied species, defied logic. It was simple and yet infinite, fragile and yet unbreakable. In that touch, Jason felt a promise, silent but powerful, that what had begun in fear and curiosity had grown into something enduring. "I will watch you," she said, her voice low and steady, "as you walk among your kind. I will see the heart you carry, and I will honor it. Remember this, human, to care is never weak, even when everything around you seeks to prove it is." Jason's chest tightened with emotion. Every fear, every doubt, every lonely moment he had ever endured as a human on this alien ship seemed to dissolve into a single, radiant certainty. He had been recognized, and his heart mattered. When it was time to leave, Jason turned slowly, glancing back once at the Queen. Her silhouette shimmered in the soft lights, regal and untouchable, yet somehow intimate, somehow reachable. He felt a surge of pride and determination that he had never known. The corridors outside, once cold and intimidating, now seemed like a path forward, illuminated by the strength he had discovered within himself. As he walked away, he carried more than memories. He carried courage, understanding, and a spark of hope that could survive even the vast emptiness of space. The Queen had tested him, revealed herself to him, and seen him truly, and in return he had dared to show his heart. That mutual recognition, fragile but real, was something no distance or danger could erase. Jason knew deep down that this was not the end. It was a beginning of something human and something extraordinary, something that proved even in a galaxy filled with fear, power, and endless uncertainty, the human heart could shine brighter than anyone expected. And with that thought, he stepped into the corridors, his chest lifted, his heart strong, and his spirit fully, undeniably human. For the first time, Jason did not feel small. He felt alive. He felt courageous. He felt seen. And he knew that no matter where the stars took him, the bond he shared with the alien queen would always be a light he could carry with him, unseen by others but unbreakable, eternal, and true.